By late 1943, something felt wrong inside German Naval Command. U-boats were still sailing. Orders were still being issued. Radio traffic continued to flow. On paper, the system was intact, but the numbers told a different story. Submarines were disappearing at a rate that could no longer be explained by chance. Entire patrols failed to return. Experienced commanders vanished on missions that, by every calculation, should have been survivable. Losses were no longer isolated. They were patterned. At first, German command resisted the implication. The Atlantic was dangerous. Allied escorts had improved. Long-range aircraft were everywhere. These explanations were familiar, comfortable, and, most importantly, did not challenge doctrine. But gradually, an unsettling question began to surface. How did the Allies always seem to know where the U-boats were? Convoys changed course before contact. Aircraft arrived with no warning. Escort groups appeared in places that should have been empty. Time after time, German commanders reported the same thing: interception without prior detection. Still, no one was ready to say the word radio. German naval doctrine was built on communication. Centralized control had defined the U-boat war from the beginning. Orders coordinated patrols. Reports shaped strategy. Silence was dangerous. Silence meant isolation. Silence meant losing control. Admitting that radio transmissions themselves were the problem meant admitting that the very foundation of command was flawed. For months, that possibility was dismissed, but the losses continued. By early 1944, the evidence could no longer be ignored. Statistical analyses showed that U-boats were being intercepted with increasing precision. The margin of error was shrinking. This was not random. This was not luck. Somewhere, the Allies were seeing something they should not have been able to see. Quietly, cautiously, German command began to suspect the truth. It was not the codes. Enigma, they believed, remained secure. The encryption procedures were complex. Key changes were frequent. No clear proof of compromise existed. If the messages were not being read, then only one possibility remained. The signals themselves were betraying them. This realization did not come as a dramatic revelation. There was no single document, no sudden confession. It emerged slowly through fragments of reports, field observations, and uneasy patterns that refused to disappear. Once the suspicion took hold, German command reacted, but not decisively, because reacting decisively meant surrendering control. New measures were introduced. Transmissions were reduced. Reporting intervals were extended. Some commanders were encouraged to maintain longer periods of radio silence. Acknowledgements were delayed or avoided when possible. On paper, it looked like adaptation. In reality, it was far too late. By this point, Allied radio intelligence no longer depended on constant transmissions. Months of intercepted signals had already revealed operational rhythms, patrol zones, command habits. Even silence had become informative. When a U-boat went quiet, Allied analysts did not see absence. They saw deviation, and deviation itself was a signal. The Allies also possessed something the Germans did not fully grasp: time. HF/DF networks had matured. Listening stations on land and aboard ships worked continuously. Bearings accumulated. Patterns solidified. What began as rough estimates became reliable predictions. The ocean had stopped being opaque. German attempts at radio discipline changes created new problems. Without regular reports, command lost situational awareness. Coordination broke down. Wolfpack operations became harder to organize. Individual boats were left to operate blindly, unable to adapt to shifting conditions. The fleet was now caught between two impossible choices: transmit and be detected, remain silent, and lose coordination. There was no longer a safe option. Inside German headquarters, frustration grew. Orders contradicted each other. Some commanders demanded stricter silence. Others insisted that control must be maintained. The system hesitated, uncertain which danger was greater. Meanwhile, Allied forces exploited the confusion. Convoys were routed away from known patrol zones. Escort groups hunted preemptively. Aircraft patrolled areas where U-boats were expected to surface, not where they had been seen. German submarines arrived to empty seas. Or worse, many were destroyed shortly after surfacing, attacked before crews even understood they had been detected. Survivors reported the same bewildering experience. The enemy appeared as if summoned. By the time German command fully accepted the role radio intelligence had played, the strategic situation was irreversible. The Atlantic was no longer contested. It was controlled. After the war, captured documents confirmed what wartime commanders could only suspect. Allied success had not relied solely on broken codes or superior firepower. It relied on something more fundamental. Germany's need to control its fleet had made the fleet visible. Every transmission, no matter how short, every acknowledgement, no matter how routine, every attempt to manage the war from afar. The realization came too late. Germany did eventually understand that its radios were compromised, not by decryption alone, but by detection. But by the time that understanding spread through command, the U-boat war was already over in all but name. Submarines continued to sail. Crews continued to fight. But the outcome was decided. The Battle of the Atlantic was not lost in a single engagement. It was lost gradually, quietly, through a system that revealed itself piece by piece. Germany finally realized the truth about its radios. And by then, there was nothing left to save.